Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Creepy woods threat anyone?
I have a few stories from back in the day. I like to post them in a scary woods thread if I'm lucky enough to find one that hasn't petered out. Preface. My dad had lived in Colorado before and a bit after he fought in the Vietnam War. He moved to Cali where he started his family, took us back, my mother, sister, and I, to Colorado 3 summers in a row to drive all over the state and visit places he lived in, or places he remembers. One time it's just Dad and I out hiking in the woods by a house he used to live in, Winter Park, I believe. It's a fairly warm day, not a cloud in the sky. We're just blundering our way through some thick underbrush and foliage, having a fine old-time bonding and admiring nature. Dad gets ahead of me, cutting a path through for the small me and gets a bit out of sight. Suddenly we pop out of this thick forest into a round clearing. We're still in the tree line. Literally, you take one step and you're out of the woods and in this patch of short grass, perfectly circular. In the circle is a patch of fog, thick, soupy, and just hanging out on the ground. Not touching the trees or moving outside of the ring. We come to our senses and realize we can't hear any sort of wildlife. The sun seems darker here and the temperature seems to be dropping. My dad takes one step into the ring, making sure I was keeping back. Looks like he'd been struck by lightning. He turns around to look at me. He looks absolutely petrified. This is a man that has seen untold things in the course of a war and has refused to ever share what he may have done or experienced during that time. He looks like he's about to keel over from pure terror. He sprints away from the ring, picks me up and lofts me over his shoulder. I'm facing the clearing, I don't see a thing. He runs the entire way back to the truck. He secures me in the car, double checks behind him in the direction we just came from. We tear out of there like hell on wheels. He refuses to ever talk about it. This tale involved the whole family. It was while we were in the middle part of the state and traversing some back roads. We were on dirt roads for most of the day. We'd start at sunrise and keep going until the early afternoon. We had pressed on later than usual that day, and it was getting to be twilight. We're out in the open fields, tall grass nearly up to my face, so probably 4 feet something or other. We see a few wooden shacks here and there, no one living out there as far as we can tell. The shacks begin to look burnt, some still smoldering, and we can see smoke from fires burning higher up in the hills out past the road we're on. Dad pulls over at the closest smoldering foundation to make sure no one's hurt. He instructs us to stay in the truck, tells me to drive away if anyone comes to the car that isn't him. Take advice with a grain of salt. My dad is a survivalist and ultra cautious, which seems pretty typical of him. He's gone for maybe a half an hour. I'm playing lookout, trying to see past the tall grass to where my dad got off to. He comes back, walking briskly, has his Bowie knife out of its sheath, same wild look in his eyes as at the clearing. This occurred a few days after that incident. He says nothing, gets in the car. When asked by us, he says nothing that shouldn't have been lost was destroyed. All of us what? He refuses to explain or talk further about it. We leave and never take that road again. A newish one I actually just remembered after talking with my dad on the phone about our trips to Colorado. I remember being particularly taken with one lake in Gunnison County called Lake Morrow. It's this huge, deep, and to me at the time mystical lake sunk into a basin surrounded by trees. I had spotted it during a drive and begged my dad to take us camping there, or at least a hike down to the lake so we could swim in it. We were in a cafe while we were discussing the weather conditions and what we'd have to bring to stay out there a few nights. An older gentleman of mixed race, perhaps American Indian, but definitely a resident of the county, overhears us and comes to our table. Emphatically warns about ever going near the lake, let alone into the woods surrounding it without proper protection. My dad stares him down, but the old man refuses to leave us alone. Goes on and on about special amulets you'd need, and how he shouldn't even bring me, a young child, into the woods if he at all valued my life. Finally, he hobbles off. Dad still wants to go camping at the lake, but the old man put the scare in me, and I say, I've changed my mind. Dad drops it. We never go. To this day, I still have dreams about being alone in a small boat in the center of the lake and watching creatures circle around the edge of the water, closing in on me. I have one more, my longest story, and the other ones I can remember are really little vignettes compared to these major occurrences. I will be breaking this into parts for easier digestion. Also, just for some time references, the first 2 stories posted happened on the same trip in 2005. The third happened in 2006, and this last tale happened on our final trip to Colorado in 2007. We're driving in the middle of nowhere, incredibly remote even considering our past travels. We suddenly come upon a small town, if you could call it that is a raised square of land, with grass in the middle of it, like a commons area surrounded on 3 sides by 4 houses, for a total of 12, including one hunter's lodge. Plenty of trucks and cars and equipment scattered everywhere. Dad says it looks like old hunting spots people would rent out for the summer and use as a sort of home base. No one to be found, though. The town is called Bonanza, which makes my mom want to get out and look at it. Everyone got out of the car. My sister, father, and mom all go towards the grassy square. I spy a billboard-type sign off to the side with writing. I begin reading. There are mine shafts sunk all around the edge of this town, and it was once a busy mining town and big in silver trading. It doesn't say why, but apparently, due to the mining and underground activity, radioactive or poisonous material begins leaking into the water table. People die en masse from poisoning. People at first think it's witchcraft. Once they figure it out, they hightail it right out there. No one's bothered to re-establish the town since. I get this weird feeling. My hair stands up straight. I look up just as this feeling starts to overpower me. I see my family stepping onto the grassy area. I begin screaming and flailing wildly, running towards them in a panic, pleading with them to not go near the buildings. My sister gets super scared, freezes in her tracks. Dad walks over, pissed, looking like he's going to hit me. He stops when he gets close enough to see my face and what I imagine is unimaginable fear in my eyes. He gathers up the family without a word, nods to me, herds us into the car, and we begin driving away. I look back from the car at the lodge building, the only 2-story building, that had one of those weird triangle roofs and a window set in the middle of it facing the direction we were headed. I see the curtains covering the windows shift, and a hand puts itself through the open window. It beckons. We as a family agree to not speak of it to anyone outside of us. After that, my dad decided he didn't want to relive the memories he associated with Colorado anymore. Though if you ask me, the things that happened those 3 summers might have been a big factor in that decision. We ended up summering in Washington a few times afterwards, which definitely raised red flags in regard to Colorado.
Sounds like your dad had a lot of issues from Vietnam and you thought some of the events were paranormal. Sounds to me like he shouldn't have been camping or taking trips. Whatever it was, those environments could have possibly contributed to your father's odd behavior. Really sounds like flashbacks since you said that it had happened before. Nam vets are really fucked up from the war. Who knows what could have been going on in his mind.
Same anon that posted the stories. Saw this thread was still up, wanted to check out replies. I figured all these years that was the explanation, but we went camping and hiking in Washington several times and did some hiking in California. Nothing even remotely like Colorado ever happened again. He never seemed odd or had flashbacks of any kind. Mom told me he did a lot of bad things in Colorado, so it's possible he was remembering those events. Who knows, though? It scared and still scares me to this day to think about what happened.
Where we hunt, there is a placeway, way back in the woods that rests in a small clearing. My family calls it the Old England House, and apparently it was built and inhabited by a large family of settlers that predate the Civil War here in Missouri. According to my family, some of the settlers even fought in the border wars, and some even died. There is a big dilapidated house with strange scratchings and drawings on the inside, a small shed, an outhouse, and a water pump. But here is the best part. Up a little ways, if you have a good eye, there is a small game trail that cuts into the woods, and there is the creepiest looking cemetery in the world. There are dozens of graves, and some are mostly children and infants. Like I said above, some are soldiers, obviously a family burial ground. Who knows what happened out here? The next time I'm out there, I'll be sure to bring back some pics. It's a really interesting place. I'd like to camp out there and do some drunk ghost hunting. Also, I shit you not, one time while we were hunting, we like to stop and take breaks or eat lunch at the England House. I walked back to the cemetery, and there were freshly picked flowers in front of an unreadable grave. It's private, locked-up property, and no one lives around there for miles.
I have had a lot of weird experiences in the woods. This one was recent. I went camping with about 30 other people last week. I came early, on Sunday night, because I was driving there in a van with one of the camp overseers. This is out in the middle of nowhere, in Georgia. Georgia is a scary place. Sunday night I could hear nothing, and I mean nothing, but a coyote howling. Since that night, I started having psychic-like experiences. For example, somehow I heard a voice in my head say, "Get ready, demons are going to be the topic." Soon enough, 10 minutes later, me and the overseer and 2 others were all discussing demons. The next day I was sitting down on a bench, and I heard in my head, "The swarm is above you." I looked up and saw a wasp nest with 5 or 6 wasps on it. This is where the story gets too weird, so half of you may stop believing me now. I was going to scare a camper, a little 13-year-old. I hid under a bridge, and I heard the voice again. "To your right. Now you're on it. Run." I was confused as heck. I looked to my right and saw I was on the rattler of a rattlesnake. I screamed like a girl and ran. The snake just curled up and did something I have never seen a rattler do. Hiss. It was creepy. The next day I found it. A kid named Chris said, "Hey dude, look over here. A skull. I think it is human." I ran to where he was, and he pointed at a white thing about 20 feet from where the snake was the other day. I jumped off the bridge, and I went and got it. It was a coyote skull. The kid kept swearing it was human just a second ago. Me and my friend went back to our yurt we stayed in and collected the teeth. I decided to crack open the skull. Then it happened. Hundreds of ants, beetles, and I counted at least 2 spiders poured out of the skull. I had a psychic rush, like pure fear and euphoria mixed together, and then the rest of the week went normal. I am going back next year to collect the skull. That was the least scary of my experiences in the woods. I used to go to church, don't mention it, and me and a friend explored the backwoods out there. It was filled with children's toys, a random brick wall, and we kept hearing gunshots from no more than 20 feet away when we were in it. We also started finding burn marks all over. Scorches, burnt trees, baked ground, etc. We found a few dead animals, and the children's toys disappeared, and we found chewing tobacco and broken knives back there. We started getting stalked by 2 people. One was on a brown motorcycle who would follow us around, and almost killed my friend's brother. Then we were followed by what we guess was a human in a costume. It was white and had black eyes. It would appear around buildings and scream or just look at us and run away. The very idea of it, which we call the thing, frightens us. When we talk about him on the phone, sometimes the phone dies. The only way to describe the costume, person, entity is a white version of the Mothman. We are both still scared to go back in those woods.
I was 13, visiting my dad in Atmore, Alabama. Not much there but farmland and woods that go on forever. Love going in the woods, but always went armed. Usually my semi-auto 22 since it's light. Also had a small scope on it. Always traveled on a Yamaha 80 dirt bike, then would stop when I got wherever I thought was nice for a stroll. I was on one of my usual trips toward a small creek that ran on the other side of a rather big hill. On the way up, I noticed what appeared to be a man in black running through the trees. Shrugged it off as a trick of the shadows. Stopped my bike on the hill and walked down toward the creek. As I walked, I paid close attention to the shadows cast through the trees. Saw nothing. When I got in sight of the creek, which rested in a sort of natural ditch when it hadn't rained for a while, I noticed what I thought was an animal from a distance. Kneel and look down my scope to figure out what the hell it is. See two glowing white eyes on a dark creature peering over the lip of the ditch, its hands resting on the edge on both sides of its face, long fingers that seem to come to a point on each. First reaction, shoot that fucker. Fire 4 rounds. Look through scope. Don't see it. Calm as I can try to be, move back to my bike. Looking behind me, constantly waiting for that thing to rush me. Make it to my bike, crank it and fly back home. Try not to notice the tall shadow that seems to follow me home.
So my family are reindeer herders, and part of the Sami people, which is basically Scandinavia's version of Native Americans. Telling stories about folklore and myths is pretty common when kids under 16 are around. Now, most of these sound tailored to scare kids from getting into trouble, but a couple of stories I've heard happened in more recent times, and one of the people involved in it took his own life. This is a retelling of how a friend of my dad told me the story, in Greentext format, I guess. So a father and his son are walking back home after helping another family with their reindeer. It's quite a distance, they don't have a car, and the roads are barely drivable in that area in the late 1960s anyway. There's a storm coming, so they decide to camp for the night in an old cabin that is about 3/5 of the way home. It sits in a valley, in a group of trees and terrain that is otherwise marsh, so it's well protected from the storm. The boy says to his father that he will run up ahead to make a fire in the cabin for when the father reaches it, so that it is warm and cozy before the old man gets there. The father lets the son go ahead, but warns him of the spirits who like to take shelter in the cabin. If you notice a spirit when you enter, don't talk to it until I arrive and stay out of the cabin. The boy pretty much goes, "Ait," and runs off. When he gets there, the cabin seems cold and empty, and so he starts making the fire. At this point, it's starting to get dark, and the stormy clouds are covering the sky, so the boy barely sees anything in front of him until the fire gets going. As he's lighting a candle, the door opens, and the candle goes out. A dark, hunched-over figure enters. Thinking his father has arrived, the boy cheerfully says hi to the figure and asks how bad the weather is getting. "Not good," says the figure with a raspy voice. The boy thinks there is something wrong with his father, and as the only light in the cabin is coming from the fire, which is rather dim, the boy tries to light a candle to get a better look at his father. But as the boy tries to light the candle, the raspy voice booms and says, "Thanks for lighting the fire, it was rather cold in here," and the candle goes out. Realizing the mistake he has made, the boy gets scared, says sorry, and runs out of the cabin and into the storm to find his father. The rain is pouring, the wind is howling extra harshly, and the boy sees no sign of his father. Beginning to cry, the boy thinks about the conversations he has had with the town Noidi, shaman, about spirits. He then returns outside the cabin, takes some meat from his backpack, and places it under an offer stone near the cabin, says sorry again, and explains himself. Suddenly the wind is a little less harsh, and his father comes through the shrubbery at the edge of the tree line, as if he suddenly appeared there. Very sternly the father asks the boy, "Did you go inside?" "Yes," says the boy, nearly in tears. "Did you speak to it?" the father asks, even sterner. "Yes, I'm sorry," says the boy, now crying again. The father then goes inside the cabin, and after a time he opens the door and motions for the boy to come inside. The fire is out, the ashes and embers are on the floor, and all the bedding is rotten. The father asks the son, "Did you offer anything to the spirit? Did you say sorry?" "Yes," answers the boy, getting ready for a beating and scolding. "Good," says the father, "or we might not have had a cabin to come to, and if we started walking home, we might never reach it." The boy makes a fire and prepares food for his father, while the father makes the best out of the rotten bedding. They then eat, go to bed, wake up the next morning and go home. The father teaches his son more about spirits and uses his story as an example to other kids, and that's how my dad's friend heard it. Not a personal experience, but it hits close to home, as that cabin is only 2 to 3 hours walk from my house. It also involves people I've spoken to and worked with. The boy took his life a couple years back, at the age of 27. I don't know if he had other issues or spirits haunted him, but something tells me the former is more plausible.
I have a couple of wood stories. I always thought they sucked, but I'll share. I'm in the UK, so we don't really have much wildlife apart from foxes, rabbits, and the occasional deer or owl, so make of it what you will. I used to go camping with my granddad. One time he said he'd found this awesome secluded spot called the Trough of Bowland while working. He delivered plant machinery, so he drove all over the country. So we went up there. The Trough is as much as nowhere as you get in England. No TV, radio, or cell phone signals, likely due to the geography. Anyway, we camped there a couple of times and never saw anyone or anything. It was great. Third time we went there, though, there was this little stream right by the camp in a narrow ditch a few feet deep, and there was this dead sheep, all mummified, like kind of half climbing out of the stream. We didn't think too much of it. We just camped further away and made sure to use water from a few minutes upstream to avoid any nasty stuff from the corpse. That night it was so cold we couldn't even sleep, so we went back to the van so we could lay in the back with the little cigarette lighter powered heater on and get warm, and we hear this god-awful screaming outside. A fox's scream. It was scary, but we knew what it was. We heard banging and sounds outside, like our camp was getting trashed. Foxes in England will sometimes do things like this out of curiosity or hunger. So we went out to scare them off. Our camp was totally wrecked, just scattered everywhere. The tents were both torn to bits, and the stuffing from the sleeping bags was all ripped up, and, worst of all, that dead sheep was nowhere to be found. All that happened in the space of maybe 30 seconds to a minute. We didn't hang around. We packed up everything and just got out of there and never went back. Next post, my other story. Brit here again. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the black cats, big dogs, and so-called Beast of Bodmin Moor stories of the UK. A few years back, I was driving up from the south, back to my home in Yorkshire. I don't know what road I was on, but it was out in the countryside, and it was fairly late at night, about 11 p.m. Just woodland on each side of the road, pitch black, except for the headlights, which I only had on low, as I was only doing about 30 miles per hour. Suddenly, there's this huge bang, like I'd hit something with the car, but no jerk or bump, so I thought I'd hit a bird. I pulled in, shitting my pants that I'd damaged my mother's car. I had to check. It was in the middle of nowhere, but what if I'd hit a drunk farmer or something? Anyway, I got the torch out of the boot, trunk, and shined it around a bit, leaving the car running. I couldn't see anything, so I walked back a bit to where I estimated I'd hit something, but couldn't find anything at all. I'll admit I get spooked a bit sometimes, and my heart is going apeshit from the adrenaline of thinking I'd hit something, so I'm walking back to the car to sit down and calm down before I start driving again. I put the torch back and got to the driver's side rear door, and up ahead in the road, on the edge of the headlights, is this huge dog just standing there watching me. Eyes just shining bright green from the light. It was big too, like the size of a Rottweiler, but less stocky and all black. I just jumped back in the car and drove like hell until I was in the nearest town. I stopped at a pub for a piss, and people kept asking me if I was okay, saying I looked pale as a ghost and telling me to be careful.
First post on /x/, and I think this thread is a perfect start. It's nothing too serious, but I have never witnessed something as strange and horrifying before nor after this incident, and maybe some local anon can even help. Northern New Jersey, Millburn to be exact. Me and a decently sized group of friends decide to go camp in these random woods just off of a trail inside them. We trek a good mile in and set up camp and start drinking when me and one friend want to head back to the cars to get the bug spray we forgot. A good 5 minutes into us attempting to walk back, we immediately get lost in the direction we're walking in, and after hearing a lot of random sticks breaking, my guess being animals, and a lot of noises which I have no clue what could be, we nope back to the site thanks to the fire they lit. I hear random sounds all night but ignore because I'm drunk, and it's the woods, so fuck you. Skip to early in the morning, pitch black, just before we all pass out. Everyone is laughing and trying to fall asleep when out of nowhere we hear the most horrible sound I think I've ever heard in New Jersey. I couldn't really explain it, other than a demonic duck or goose call, and then right after the sounds of 2 trees falling. This happened in a steady rhythm of every minute of silence and then the noise. We all heard it for 10, 20 minutes maybe, and we are all equally confused and scared. After we all decided we're going to die either way, we just passed out and woke up to people walking their dogs on the trail next to us and back to normality. It was probably nothing, but that was weird, and I've seen some weird shit in my days. My friends joked about the Jersey Devil, but that's only down south in the Pine Barrens, and we were way too up north for him to get us. Possibly it might have to do with the fact the said friend I almost got lost with was making jokes about finding Jesus and loving God, and it was just demons from Hades trolling us.
Bump, I love these threads. My house is bordered on 3 sides by about 70 acres of woods and fields. I love to go roaming around with the dog back there. Don't really have any creepy stories, only one, but it was kinda mild. Find tons of deer bones and skulls, kinda cool. Found this back at the end of the winter. Normally by itself not too big a deal, but what's a bit weird is this leg was all by itself. I searched the area in expanding circles out to about 20 or 30 yards. Not a single trace of any other deer parts. The only thing big enough to take down a deer around here is a bear, or hunters. Bears should still be hibernating, and it was way past hunting season. I'll bump with my one weird experience in my woods, pretty tame compared to other people's. I've never felt anything other than at peace out in these woods except for one time. Exploring woods with the dog end of winter, looking for deer sheds, heading back, dark soon, about 10 minutes from the house. Checking out an area I've never really explored before. Scanning for antlers, see a bone, kick some dirt off it. Cool, another deer skull. Reach down to pick it up. Notice everything is quiet, like others have mentioned. No birds, no rustling, etc. Just dead quiet. As I'm kneeling, hear unmistakable sounds of something walking, crunching sticks and brush, etc. There's a huge, thick pile of brush about 10 yards in front of me. Sounds seem to be coming from the other side of it. Didn't think much at first, probably just a deer or whatever. Weird though, dog has his hackles up, pointing, low growling. He's never done this out there in the woods. It's his happy place. Pick up a few rocks, chuck it in the general direction of noise. Generally a deer or whatever else will spook and go crashing off. Noise stops. Wait a few minutes. Starts again. Seems a little closer. Getting a bit freaked out now. Yell out something, I don't know what, just to scare it off. Noise stops. Wait a few minutes. Starts again. Definitely sounds like it's coming my direction. Screw this. Chuck more rocks, still crunching. Draw pistol, rack around, fire one into the ground, safely off to the side. Noise stops. Starts again. My dog was severely agitated, pacing, pointing, hair raised, growling steady at this point. Tactically nope my way back towards the house, facing backwards for the most part. Whatever it was stayed at about the same pace all the way to the last little path that leads to the house. No idea what it was. Like I said, I've never felt anything but peaceful out there. But there was definitely a bad vibe in the air. That whole something's watching you feeling.
On phone, so won't Greentext. When I was about 7 or 8, I went hunting with my dad near Lake of the Ozarks. It was on our private property about 3 miles deep into the woods. We got settled in next to a huge tree big enough for both of us to lean against. 2 hours went by with no talking since my dad is very serious about hunting. I finally look over at him and realize he's asleep. I decided to just be a kid and look at everything through my binoculars. About 30 minutes passed, and out of nowhere, I'm pretty sure I saw a deer. When I started to call it in, it came in full binocular view and something like grabbed it. I'm not calling skinwalker, but it was the size of a large man and was able to take down an adult buck with no problem. Through my binoculars, I could only see dust, and conveniently there's a drop-off right where they were wrestling on the ground. I woke my dad up, and of course he didn't believe me. I asked my uncle, and he said, "You usually see the unexpected in the woods." I would have pics, but that year for Christmas, my parents didn't buy me binoculars with the built-in camera. Okay, so I'll try to see if I can remember some creepy shit, but here I'll explain one from my grandpa's perspective. My grandpa owns family property in the Potosi, Missouri area. It's creatively and reverently referred to as the cabin. My grandpa has to go and visit every now and then for maintenance. He goes by himself. It's a pretty large property out in the middle of nowhere. The cabin is handmade by his parents or grandparents. It's made of stone, sits on a mid-hill, is naturally fenced in with trees, and has a wiry fence built in the trees along a highway with one large gate, which is the only entrance for vehicles. Basically, it's pretty closed off, even though it's right next to the road. The side facing the road entrance is actually considered the back of the house. It has very narrow and mostly broken stone steps that lead up to a small square of a concrete porch to enter the back of the cabin. This door leads to the main bedroom. It has a much larger porch at the actual entrance with a redneck fire pit and everything. Sorry if this is a lot of detail, but I feel like it is important and gives a good sense of what it's like. I don't know. Also, I just think the cabin is RLY cool, okay? Be Gramps. Be alone at the cabin doing maintenance shit. Go to bed in the main bedroom after a day of work. Go to sleep. Door and room leading to outside rattles. What? Not even the main entrance. The cabin is known for being broken into every now and then, so assume dumb teenagers. Yells, "Who is there? Get off my lawn, you whippersnappers." Not really, my grandpa is super nice, so actually just ask who it is. No answer. No windows or extra screen door on this back door, so cannot see who it was or if gone. Go back to bed assuming whoever is gone. More rattles later. Nope. I don't really know what he did at that point, but we discussed theories. Sometimes bears come down, but there isn't really any reason for them to climb narrow concrete stairs to a very small platform. Dumb teenagers. But if you heard someone inside, why come back? Also, one time when I was young, dumb preteens with my sister and her preteen friends decide to go across the road from the cabin to the field and the creek area further past the field. We are very creative, can't you see, with all of these names? Goof off like dumb kids do. Some girls keep seeing shadows in wooded areas. Lulwus, my sis and I grew up here. Stop being a scaredy cat. Actually getting kind of scared because the area always seemed kind of creepy. Hear far-off chainsaw sounds, very, very rural area. The neighbor is like forever away down the highway road. What if it's a chainsaw murderer anon? Tell stupid preteens to shut up. Later on, exploring another field past the creek, which has an abandoned barn in it. Admire barn owls hooting. Anon, there is a person across the field around those woods, I swear. Everyone looks, squinting, getting freaked out. Everyone sees a shadow. Nope, and run through the field near the barn house, through some trails and over the creek. More super rocky creek trails, field trails, across highway, upslope to cabin main entrance porch. Huff and puff because preteens who still have elementary school chubs tell parents they don't fucking believe us. No one takes kids seriously. Now that I look back, there was some land past the farmhouse with an old and abandoned farmhouse, but I know at some point it was bought and fixed up. So it could always have been people looking to buy that land or crazy rednecks.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.